says, there it goes.
All right, here we are. Take two. All right, welcome to the Real Estate Locker Room Show, folks. I'm your host, John Carney, and thank you for tuning in and spending your valuable time with us here today on the Real Estate Locker Room. If this is your first time joining, well, this is our first time doing a Zoom video podcast, so thank you for tuning in. And if you are a return listener, a repeat offender, I'm very grateful that you're taking your time to tune into the show. We are moving into 2019 here. Well, we still have a little bit of 2019 left, and we're joining the video podcast craze. And to help me out today and walk me through this is going to be my podcast video mentor and a real estate gun out of California, Mr. Gary Boomershine. Welcome to the show, Gary.
It's a pleasure to be here, John. I know that I actually had an awesome interview with you for our podcast, realestateinvestor.com huddle. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited to deliver some value to your listeners and talk shop. It's interesting because talking real estate, a lot of us, we get into real estate, but there's other parts of it. If we're an entrepreneur or business owner, there's also the struggle, right? Of like, how do you balance what we do and, hiring people and hiring the right people and firing the wrong people, and also having families and marriages and keeping that all afloat. And I just love chatting about that, mostly from like lessons learned and all the mistakes over the many years. And I love it because I get a lot of feedback. I had a guy, Javier sent me a message. This is probably a month ago. He's on the East Coast. He basically said, hey, man, I want to let you know you actually saved my marriage. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So it's like, if I did all kinds of podcasts and I got one message that saved a marriage, it's like, hey, man, God bless you for that comment. So Javier Hinojo, who 2017, he basically said he had 17 cents in his bank account. And talking to him now, he's in 5 markets with a well into the 7 figures business. And so I get fired up on this topic, and product everywhere, right? It's not like we're selling some widget. It's like real estate, there's product everywhere. And it's a matter of like, hey, it takes work, it takes effort, it takes tenacity. And a lot of the people are willing to put in the work and follow the best practices, have success. And those that are not and complainers don't, right? Just like any other industry.
It is. I mean, look, I love the term real estate entrepreneur, especially if you're having a go at yourself. You've taken that step away, and this is going to be your career. But I mean, there's a lot of people that have great careers and do this on the side. Here's what, kind of a phrase I heard you say earlier, success leaves clues. The premise of this show is, to learn from others who are successful in their careers. I love to explore the intersection of competitive sports and competitive real estate, right? And I've had the opportunity to interview people from around the world, a lot of immigrants here in America from other countries, right? So it's not just, your NFL players now that we're approaching the kickoff to, the 2019-2020 season, but, cricket, ping pong, fencing, people are inspired, I think, to a degree by competition. So I like to warm up, so to speak, stretch out, get the conversation going. Is there an athlete that you admire in sports that you say, wow, what is that guy doing, and how can I apply some of that magic to my life?
Yeah, you know what? I am going to make a huge confession, and you almost need sound in the background that goes, oh, right? My confession is I know almost nothing about NFL and professional sports. I am an avid soccer player. So I actually was playing indoor. I just turned 50, and I've been playing soccer my whole life. I play sports. I love sports, but I can't actually sit in front of a TV at all. I go crazy. It's probably like the ADD in me. And then I'm really good at remembering numbers and like crazy facts. People are like, man, you're an encyclopedia of facts of like useless information. Like I could talk about, 1933 FDR wrote, HJR 192. Like I can remember that, but I can't remember names of of people in sports. Like if you ask me anybody that, even the 49ers, right? Jerry Rice and some old players, but I couldn't tell you a single person on the 49er team today. So I make that confession. You probably need the background music like, ooh, right? But I will tell you that every professional athlete, I remember even Jerry Rice back in the day, it was like it was repetition. That guy, and I'm in a town of a lot of 49ers and a lot of Giants and A's players in my town. I live in the East Bay, Danville, California. And repetition, and those guys all have really, really good coaches. I think of Will Smith. If you watch Will Smith, it's the practice. And I love the guys because those are the best practices. I also think in real estate, we need coaches, we need mentors as well. So anyway, that's my confession. I wish I could tell you other people that inspire me. But I don't watch any TV either. I don't watch the news. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I read a lot of books, but I can't, we don't even have cable, John, coming into our house. I haven't watched. My wife and I, we've got 2 kids, and I got a junior in college, going to a private school in Southern California, and a sophomore in high school. And we watch no TV. We have a little Netflix, but my wife and I like Suits and things like that. But anyway,
well, we watch documentaries. We don't watch a lot of TV. We don't let our kids watch a lot of TV, right? We have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I tend to agree. But we'll take what you just said, right? You do have a little bit of insight into when you did watch sports, and Jerry Rice was known. I'm of that era too, right? I mean, he was known for his work off the field, right? That work ethic and the repetition. So I mean, that's sort of a common thread, I suppose. We were talking earlier about competition in your market, or I'm in this niche and it's too competitive, and but you look at the players that wanna push through that excuse and be successful. So I mean, you've got a great story. You're going back to when you started online in 2005, and I'd love to hear your success story, Gary.
Yeah, a success story, and also like the failures, which is, it hasn't always been easy. I think I probably cracked the code, just about 4 years ago. So it's, I got into real estate full time. I'll tell a little bit about my backstory, but from 2004 to really 2013, I had success, but I was an absolute workaholic. Never felt like I had an empowered team. I felt like I had to do everything. And I had a lot of angst. My family did not get to see me that often because I was working all the time. And I think that it was really 2013 where it was the changer. And I'd love to share some of that. But my little backstory for me, so I run a company called realestateinvestor.com. A lot of people in the agent and the investor world know us as REI Vault. We're the largest marketer in the real estate niche. Altogether, we've sent out over 37 million pieces of direct mail, finding sellers and buyers for agents, top producing agents and investors. We've tracked every response rate known to mankind. So we've sent out over 350 different types of mail pieces, follow-up letters, packages, offer packages, the postcards. A lot of the postcards that people are sending right now are actually created by us. And we've also do cold calling and outbound text messaging and RVM, which is ringless voicemail. We're adding pay-per-click and Facebook marketing right now. But so realestateinvestor.com, we've got about 250 really experienced investors. Most of the people that work with us are, people that are full-time. Some of them, I'd say half of them at least have teams, and trying to jump the line to go from like doing everything themselves to actually reinventing and leading in their business. And so they come to us for really our expertise as a marketing and inside sales team to generate leads and give them some consistency. And so that's what I do now. Been doing that for a while. Actually, that started out of a mastermind. I was in a high-end mastermind in 2010 2013, and 110 of us were all talking about how hot the real estate market is, but everything was off market, right? You back in the day, 10 years ago, 2009 to 2013, you didn't have to do any direct mail. It was all bank-owned REOs and foreclosure auctions and HUD properties. That's the deal flow. So the struggle that people had was the money, because in the front end of a cycle of real estate, the money's tight. Usually the banks have the deal flow, but then it turned. And so now we have to go after direct to the seller. And so everybody was talking about postcards and letters and this and that, Podio. And so I said, hey, why don't we just have one team? Instead of all of us being real estate people trying to figure out the tech, why don't we just have one shared team to get massive economies of scale? And so that's what I started. But I'm a real estate investor full-time. Came out of the technology world, actually. I was a computer engineer, kind of geek. And I got hired to a company called Accenture, which is the largest technology and management consulting firm in the world. Worked crazy hours. So that was way back in the early 90s. I did that for 5 years, and then I did 4 technology startups where I moved into software sales. And I think my first year in software sales, I was on United Airlines 180,000 miles. So I was traveling like crazy. And it was 2004. My wife and I just said, hey, we need to have a life. We got inspired in real estate. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and got inspired around passive income, of the definition of wealthy being passive income greater than our expenses. And so my wife and I started, and that was 2004. I burned the ships, meaning my wife and I both quit our jobs. We had 2 kids, one that was 2 months old, who's now 15. She just got her driver's permit. So we
Look out.
Yeah, I know.
Look out,
oh
California.
Oh, I bought a Ford F-250 diesel truck. I think I'm the only one in California, by the way. And my daughter is freaked out. She goes, I can't drive that big truck. So I'm actually I'm gonna get an SUV. So that's my thing right now. A little easier truck to drive for her. But yeah, so 2004, and I bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties. I do a lot of lending today. I am probably, what I love most passionate about is not even the marketing. I'm good at the marketing. My background gave me the capability of having a large team. We have over 100 people working for me all over the world. I've got a really strong COO and team that kind of manages all that. But what I'm really good at is sales. I'm really good at getting on the phone, working with the seller, finding their problem. I love competing, super competitive, but I'm also super focused on the most important person in the transaction, which is the seller. And following old sales principles of honoring the customer, right? You've got a customer in every business. This business is sales, right? Marketing and sales. And in every sale, there's a customer, and you've got to figure out who is that customer. It's the seller. And then I basically honor the customer and problem solve with the seller. And if you do it right with high integrity, you can beat out all your competition. And in my markets, the 4 markets that I work are all highly competitive. California is ridiculously over the top competitive.
Well, I don't know that there's anywhere in America that's not, right? I mean, it's almost like we have more people right now looking for a place to stay. There's a huge shift, at least, where we are in Cleveland. People are moving downtown, and the cranes in the high-rise apartments are going up. And that's happening in Denver. I don't know every market. I know it's happening in Texas. We know that that's an active market. Florida, but I mean, it just seems everywhere is competitive.
Oh, Atlanta. Go to Boise, Idaho, like Meridian right now, off the charts. So it's cyclical, by the way. For anybody that hasn't been around in real estate for more than 10 years, real estate is a cycle. It's typically 7 to 8 years. It's been like that for over 100 years. 9/11 to 2008 was almost 7 years to the day, by the way. It's a 7 to 8 year cycle. We're just happen to be like longer. This cycle is closer to 9 or 10 years. And we're at a stage that a lot of a lot of experts would call the euphoric stage of real estate. Euphoria means everybody's talking about it. You go into the barber or the nail salon and they're talking about it again. And you can't turn on a TV. I was actually working out at the gym, and there's fortune builders, Stan Merrill and Dean Graziosi. Love those guys, by the way. They're great at what they do, and they're on TV. So here I am at the gym, and you got one TV with one real estate guru and another TV with another. So it's the stage of real estate, and I think that's a good thing. Also, the market's going to turn, and I'm excited about that. There's huge wealth transformation during those cycles, and so I think this is a great time of the market, for different strategies. And then I love markets like Cleveland. I call them the linear markets. The linear markets are the ones that are steady eddy. They're cash flow markets that really haven't gone up and down more than 5 or 6% in the cycles. And those are great markets to buy and hold in, especially if you can do any kind of creative deals with sellers, right?
In Cleveland specifically, it doesn't matter. Like if you want to be an investor, call out to anyone who's got a trade skill. If you can lay tile or do anything inside a house and then move to this city and do that for yourself and for other people, you're going to amplify your wealth, because we have a shortage of qualified people, and that's pushing prices up for everything. So, I mean, it's a challenging game here across. We're in multifamily, but it doesn't matter if you have single family homes or duplexes or whatever commercial real estate, and you're doing build outs in offices or retail centers. I mean, finding the help to be that successful component on your team is challenging. And I've got a call coming up later with a friend of a friend. They want to go right into the high end, the high end fix and flip game. And it's like, I'm thinking you need a builder, and man, they're all super busy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that the high risk markets right now are those rehabbers. The rehabbers in retail, I think, are the ones, especially any of the coastal areas, are the ones that probably have the high risk. I'm seeing some very interesting trends, especially talking to, I'm in 9 different mastermind groups, all, 7 and 8 figure people. But I'm seeing people that are doing rehabs in markets like Denver and Dallas that are almost breaking even, just trying to keep their teams busy. And that is a very dangerous game to play. So, you and I talked about this a little bit ago. Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett, when they owned Berkshire Hathaway, big real estate brand, but he said, buy low, sell high, don't lose investor money, and follow the local laws. And that is a success formula, right? And a lot of people they're seeing their profits shrink, especially a lot of these rehabbers, and they really should be standing back thinking about their business, because I call it expedite the splat. Expedite the splat. It's a best practice of like, hey, if you're actually seeing a wall in front of you and you're out there like maybe 9 months, a year, even 2 years ahead of it, you need to fast forward and actually look at what that looks like so you can actually change your trajectory. Because real estate's a cycle, and there are a lot of people that get squished in the turn of the market. And you got to be constantly changing, and those people that are changing actually do incredibly well. By the way, I come from the software industry. You talk about change. It's in our DNA. You've got to be changing. And so that's, real estate. It's like, hey, what works right now? Wholesaling on the single family, because whoever can control the deal flow is making a ton of money. That's all sales and marketing, and there's not a lot of risk. Those that are buying creatively, I love the linear markets of multifamily. I know Tim Bratz is in your market. I know he's doing incredibly well. And in the change of the market, lending becomes incredible. So like I love the lending business, but what happens at a turn of a cycle? The money disappears. That's what happens. One of the things we're seeing in lending is money is really easy to get right now. And some of these lenders are taking incredible risks, right? They're funding like 90% of the after repaired value, or, some of these numbers that they're doing at ridiculous low interest rates. And so when the market turns, those guys get wiped out again. So anyway.
Well, it's a new set of lenders, right? They got new blood in there that was too young to have been at the table or on the phones 10 years ago or 11 years ago. Well, so, it's interesting, like what you just said about lending, if you don't mind jumping into that, so, going back, I think I made my first hard money loan. I'll never forget it. I was walking on an airplane about to go on a trip overseas, and the guys I was working with said, "Hey, do you want to lend into a deal? If you say yes today, we'll need the funds, in 72 hours." And I said, "Okay, I can land and get that organized for you." And it was my first kind of step into that world where and now I use HELOC money, to cover the interest rate, make some points, and it just provides some cash flow. And there's a few deals in the pipeline. I've got a trusted group here locally that I work with. They're attorneys. They vet their lending partners in the opportunities and structure it in a way that you don't really want to take over the asset, but it's not the end of the world if you do. Mm-hmm. And that took some time and patience to get there. And it's like anything. I start real small and got comfortable with the team of people. Can you kind of talk about how you participate in that segment? Because it's been explained on this show by another private money guy that's kind of like, what he considers the top layer once you've got your cash flow and you're taking enough of it and pushing it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So first and foremost is mindset. And everything that I do in real estate, I think like a banker. I think that is something that's missing in the real estate niche. It's like where we are on the food chain. And I want like everybody that's listening to this, some people, it's a huge aha. People have like, their heads have like almost like, spun around and fallen off when I've said this. If we look around on every corner in America of the world, what are the biggest buildings, right? Everywhere in every city. And it's not a rehabber. It's not an apartment owner. It's not a real estate investor. It's actually a bank. It's a banker. And why? Because the business model works. And what you're talking about of using your HELOC, it's an arbitrage play. Now, a real estate investor, imagine we take a piece of paper. Wish I had a little diagram for this, but just follow me along. If you take a piece of paper and you were to draw a line down the center, and on the left-hand side, you said real estate investor, this is what they do. Lender, banker, this is what they do, right? A real estate investor has to figure out and learn the strategy, apartments, fix and flip, wholesaling. They got to get coaches. They got to buy the courses, do all the training. They then have to figure out the marketing, hire a company like realestateinvestor.com or REI Vault to go do it all for them. Then they got to get the staff. Then they got to go find the deals, talk to the sellers. I call that kissing frogs to get the deal. Right now they have the deal and now they need the money. And so they go to the banker, lender for the money. And who writes the rules for lending? The banker is the one that controls the power because they have the money. So then let's say they decide to lend the money and they get a personal guarantee and they get their kids to sign and they get all their assets locked up, right, as collateral. And then who's the first to get paid on a real estate transaction? The bank, right? Who's the last to get paid? The real estate investor. And if anything goes wrong, who's on the hook? Real estate investor. So here's the deal with real estate. It's all a finance lending game. See, a real estate investor finds an asset that they use as a collateral plus themselves to borrow money at one rate and make money at another, and they take the spread. Plus they get all the benefits of depreciation and appreciation, et cetera, right? A lender, but the problem with the investor is they have to now deal with the asset class of tenants, toilets, trash, and problems, right, and market. A banker literally prints a piece of paper on their computer, and as long as they get somebody to sign on the dotted line, they use that as the collateral to borrow the money. So you're going out and borrowing your HELOC, but it's already backed by the asset. It's already backed by the guarantor who's probably even put a down payment down, right? It's an arbitrage play. Banks, so the reason this is important on mindset is it's all a finance game. And banks are always looking at the downside. Banks are always looking at taking back the property. So as a banker, for me, as a lender, I am always looking, would I be happy in a down market, right, taking back the property? And as a real estate investor at heart, absolutely, right? I'm like, okay, I'll take back that property. An investor is usually always looking at the upside. They're very limited to looking at the downside. So I think the mindset's important. Here's what I'm doing in lending. Right now in this market, in what I would call the euphoric market, I'm only doing first position lending. So I'm only going into first. I don't do seconds at all. Now, at the beginning of the market, when the market turns, I'll do firsts and seconds. And that's called rehab lending. I take a spread. I use my own money, but I also have a small fund, and I have people like my mom and my in-laws and some doctors and some lawyers and people that actually love to make money, easy money with me, and I take a small spread on that. So if you just took $1 million, right, and you're making a 3 or 4% spread on $1 million, you run the math, it's pretty amazing cash flow. So I do first position loans, backed by, I like properties that I can actually see. I always want I only do loans, like I don't write any of the paperwork myself. I always use a licensed broker or attorney to do all the paperwork. I think that's super important. And I always go through a title company. So a lot of people do paperwork on their own or what have you, and that's a huge risk. Banks don't do that.
It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Team. So we've covered team. We believe real estate's a team sport on this podcast, Gary. And there's a reason lawyers write up there after accountants, and they kind of work together as a 1 + 1 = 5. But I didn't mean to interrupt, but I don't even. It's unfathomable to try and write your own lending document.
Let me tell you where I source all my loans. Hard money brokers. So I work with a bunch of hard money brokers. I'm one of their, hard money brokers make their money. It's not their money. They're coming to guys like me, typically individuals, and they're collecting points and origination fees, junk fees. That's what a hard money person does. They make money on the points and fees, and they'll service the loan. And then, like in my market, it's like 0.5%. So they're sending me deal flow. I don't have to talk to the borrower, the investor. I get to see also what's going on in the market. So they're coming to me. I get tons of referrals as well. So a lot of my referral business for my real estate comes right from that. But for me to do a loan from start to finish is about, I was in Montana fly fishing, and I did 2 loans last week while I was fishing for a week on a drift boat. It takes about an hour for me to do an evaluation. I'm actually doing super low risk loans right now. I funded a $800,000 loan in California, and the borrower put $1 million in cash as a down payment. So imagine a $800,000 loan, first position, where there's $1 million of down payment, and then they're putting another 500 into rehab. So if the market turned, and by the way, it's in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, which is right by Stanford University. So when I look at a deal, I'm like, okay, if the market had the worst implosion like 2008, and there was a massive earthquake and the entire house went into rumble, would I still be okay taking back the property? And it's like, yeah. So I fund those kinds of deals. That's what I'm doing right now. I get almost a 2-digit number, so I'm getting a little above 9%, 9.5%, and I take a spread and I invest my own money. I do a lot of 401k investing on our family wealth, and I do that. So anyway, I could have been a 2-minute.
No. I mean, well, it's good because it's not something we always dive into, and recently we've had not every show's really been the same, and I think it's it's important for the audience, the people that are going to spend their valuable time listening to us have a good time talking about something we love, is that there's other strategies other than owning a title. And you know, we could talk about that forever. I mean, the other important thing that you mentioned right up front is, you know, it's sales and marketing. At what level of sales and marketing and owning titles and managing teams do you want to be in this business? I mean, it really is something for everyone. I would imagine that you know, depending on when you enter and how you've seen a lot more than I have. You've been in the industry longer than I have, and you've got a real large international team. But I mean, is that correct? I mean, you got to have that sales and marketing component. If you're not good at it, Gary is, and he can help you out with some of the, not everyone loves making cold calls. You know, that's just a fact. And not everyone has the creativity to put together the best flyer, but you're a resource for that, an important resource in every level of the real estate industry. And then, you know, you've talked about, hey, once you kind of have some deal flow and you want to get into something that you feel you can evaluate as a air quote safe investment, right? Everyone's got a different threshold for risk and tolerance for risk. You can take that extra money and multiply that through points and interest rates. So
yeah,
we touched on that.
You know, I'll share a couple things. One thing I've learned, and I think is important, and 90% of investors miss this. Okay, there's actually three components of real estate that are super important. There's cash now, there's cash flow, and there's cash later. And so many investors are looking at only one of those buckets. And that is actually long-term, that's highly risk. It's a high risk proposition. So cash now is typically a single transaction. You do it once, you get paid once. Like wholesalers, rehabbers, flippers, that's a cash now strategy. That's usually full of tax, negative tax ramifications too. And by the way, Warren Buffett doesn't even call that group of people a real estate investor. So you have a lot of people who are wholesaling, flipping, fixing, flips, which I do too, but that's not a real estate investor. That's a real estate business owner. That's an operator. And an operator needs to run like a business, and it needs a CEO and a team. So a lot of people forget that. But cash now is awesome. But really there's cash flow. That's the building the wealth. And then cash later is how to become rich. Okay. If you looked at the Robert Kiyosaki model. So cash now, cash flow is typically, and here's like what I love about cash flow: apartments, right? Especially where you get the value add of like what you're doing, lending, right? I do a deal, I turn around and I'm lending the money out and I'm getting a cash flow on it. And then cash later is the appreciation and depreciation. It's all the benefits on the long term. And I think we need, as real estate professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, we need to be looking at all three of those. So there are a lot of, you know, Warren Buffett says a real estate investor is somebody who already has money, they find a property and they own it forever until they 1031 it, right? And that's a real estate investor. So I think it's really important. And I share that a lot, and I've had a lot of people that have given me feedback that it's helped them. I know for me, I've had to learn that because you know, it's really easy to get a tax hit or a change in the market, and I say get caught with your pants down. And I think those you need to be thinking like that and thinking like a banker. In terms of you know, you were just mentioning about the marketing and the sales team. Yeah, I'll share it with everybody who doesn't really know much about me. I've got a company. We've got about 250 experienced investors and agents that use our service. It's kind of it's like we become an extension of somebody's marketing and sales team. We're not a vendor. They're bringing us in as experts. It's like for the cost of about one person, them hiring a $10 an hour resource, they're getting the equivalent of a 40-person expert team. So we manage the marketing to a budget that they provide. And we also do all the phone work. So that means we generate the leads, and then we turn those leads, and we do all the kissing of frogs, all the outbound phone work, the millions and millions of phone calls to get the seller qualified at the right time. It's a 6 to 10 minute interaction with the seller, and then we get an appointment. So we're actually scheduling appointments and doing that all over the country. We offer semi-exclusivity, so we don't put a lot of people in the same market because we don't want, us stepping over. And so it's really for the people that are trying to scale. So a lot of people will come in and say, hey, I just want to try this and put my toe in the water for a month or two, or not sure about real estate. It's like, that's not a good fit for us. What we're at is somebody that's already making money, and they're really ready to go to the next level, jump the line. And those are the people that we can really help and service. So that the main website is reivault.com. There's a see if I qualify, and I've had all of our information put there, but it works out to about $10 an hour, like the cost of one VA. And then we do everything for you, including the phone work. And then I do have a cold calling option. Cold calling is really popular right now. We'll actually go and build it's called data stacking, where we're actually pulling a very targeted list. We're getting all the phone numbers and skip tracing that list on behalf of our members. And then we're loading that into an auto dialer that we manage. And then we have outbound calling that's happening Monday through Saturday. And we've done over 1 million of those calls. And so I do that. We're continuing to offer more and more kind of shared capabilities around marketing and sales to our members. And a lot of them are actually, we have a private community where people are connecting. It was amazing. This has all happened where somebody will find a deal in Atlanta, they'll live in Atlanta, but they'll find a deal in Cleveland, and they'll say, hey, they'll post on Facebook, hey, anybody out there in Cleveland? And people are connecting and sharing deals. We got some people, 7-figure guys, 3 of them in Indianapolis, that are actually kind of partnering up on stuff. And they're all clients of ours, members of ours.
But you know what? It's I'm looking at your sign in the background, right? And I'm listening to you. And for the audience out here, when an entrepreneur names their brand or their business, right? It is a vault. It's a wealthy tool that anyone in the real estate game should be thinking about accessing. So we'll make sure that all the appropriate links go up on the show notes. And now that we've joined the era of Zoom, Gary, it's front and center in my backdrops, in the mail. Didn't make it quite here yet, but thanks for sharing all that. And I like to wind this up with some questions that relate to what you do every day. I'm an avid reader, and we've got great guests who seem to follow that trend, right? The success leaves clues trend. Is there a book that you have in your office that you recommend everybody who's playing the real estate game pick up and check out?
I actually pulled them because I know that you were going to ask me that preparing for this call. So this one, if I picked up anyone, a lot of you on this call, this is a popular one in the real estate niche. This has been a life changer for me as a business owner to give me freedom. It's Traction by Gina Wickman. Great book, but you have to implement, right? I call it education without implementation is just expensive entertainment. Watch TV if you're not going to implement. But Traction is incredible. In fact, they have a model called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And this book has given me freedom to be able, I spent 3 weeks in Europe with my family. I just got back from a week in Montana. My wife said it was the best summer ever in our entire marriage. And I would say it was because we implemented that book. This is an incredible book. Ben Horowitz on The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I know you probably know all these.
The Traction book just came up. I was talking with another business owner, and I'll go just quick rabbit hole. He runs our headhunting firm or recruiting firm, whatever you want to call it. But we've been able to attract A players, and he's doing it differently. He's using video and in different channels. But I mean, he was talking about EOS, and then there's people, he's down the road for me. And there's people in our market that will come in to help you read traction, there are people that help you implement. And for me, I can read a book, but then I want to go to the people that have implemented it. I already have one, you're number two. And then how? Right? How do I have my team buy into this so that you?
I'll tell you. So this is the coach. I said at the beginning of the call, I have 4 coaches. One of them is a traction coach. So his name is Randy Tossig. I was at a mastermind, Collective Genius, great mastermind. Jason Medley runs that. And Randy Tossig from Virginia came in and spoke about the traction model. And this is in 2013, I ran literally to the back of the room and said, I want to hire you. And I didn't even have a management team, by the way. And so we just finished our 14th session. So I rent a house. We're fully distributed. I rent a house every quarter. So the next one is on November 19th. The last one was in San Diego. We do it in a cool place. We did it in Hawaii. I fly the management team. We spent a couple of days of prep and then a full day of implementing EOS. But it gives massive clarity, especially as business owners, having a massive clarity on where we're heading, exactly what we're going to do and what things are going to look like. And then an accountability, more importantly, an accountability model of how to hold everybody accountable to execute. It's super simple. Give you a couple others. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This is one of the best sales books I've ever read. He was a former top negotiator for the FBI, negotiating with terrorists. And what's interesting is he basically said, when you're negotiating with terrorists, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. It's not like you can negotiate on price. So that's a fantastic book. I'll give you one last one. This is the best sales book, period. Even better than all of them. I read this many years ago. In fact, I think I've read this like 10 times. But this is from Frank Bediger. Maybe you can put this in the show notes, but it's How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. And awesome principles. This Dale Carnegie, actually, it was a foreword of this book. I think this was written in like the 70s, but this is a high-end insurance sales guy, door-to-door insurance. But the principles are the exact same. The follow-up, the philosophies, the competition of winning. So you see all the little bookmarks. I always go back to this thing. I got it color-coded.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing those, because those are Chris Voss I've read, and he's come up. It must be a newer book that entrepreneurs and hard chargers are seeing on Amazon, and click get me that. But okay, so to wrap it up, is there a principle, or is there a practice, a ritual, a habit that you have? Either it doesn't have to necessarily be daily. Was it weekly, monthly, annual? What is it that helps you connect the dots and stay focused on your business when you're focused on your business, and focused on your family when you want to be focused on your family?
Yeah. So I'm fairly new to Instagram, and I want to share this. It's kind of funny. It will answer your question, but I do a morning minute on exactly this topic every day, or most of the days. My morning minute on Instagram. So if you go to Gary Boomershine and follow me on Instagram, you'll typically see those little nuggets as an entrepreneur of what it is. But I will tell you the one, I have a 5-10-3 concept, followed by my one thing, the Gary Keller one thing. So 5-10-3. I used to struggle with time and being busy and working, being a workaholic, and having my priorities in the wrong priority. Like my family came at last. So 5-10-3, this came from a coach. So I changed my program. I used to be a night owl. I used to work nights and weekends, and I was super tired, always behind for meetings. Never felt like I could get stuff done. So 5-10-3 is now I wake up at 5. I push my entire day out until 10. So I don't talk to anybody. I don't look at social media, email. So from 5 to 10 o'clock in the morning, those are 5 hours. That's my time every day. And I'm actually close to 11 now on most days. And so I'm off limits to my team, and I work out, I journal, I read scripture, I make coffee and clean the dishes and make the kitchen all nice for my family and do some acts of service. And the three are, I work 3 hours a day as a CEO in my business. So I'm focused for 3 hours. Now, some days I'll go longer, but I get everything done in 3 hours as a CEO at high money making activities. So I said followed by the one thing. So during my 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing one thing. I'm thinking about what's the one thing that I can do today that will move the trajectory in my business. And I have 3 hours max to get it done. And by the way, sometimes I can get it done in 15 minutes, because when you don't have a lot of time, you start thinking differently, because most of us are so used to getting in and doing the work, but CEOs actually have to manage and leverage, right? And so I'm operating as, at $1,000 to $10,000 an hour minimum. And how can I move the marker? And so I go to my whiteboard over here, and you'll notice it's clean because I've already done it today. So I basically write my one thing, and sometimes I'll get that as many as 3. And if I can't get all 3 done, I go back the next and get it done. So that's been a life changer for me.
Awesome. You're awesome, Gary. And thank you for sharing your success story. And I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. They're going to be great show notes. So I'm not going to recap our conversation. We'll direct people to the website, but more importantly, where can the audience find you and learn more about your products and how you can help them raise the bar in their business?
Yeah, if you need help with marketing and sales, REI Vault, so REIVAULT.com, great place to go. There's a way to book an appointment, find out about us, and have a live interaction. Realestateinvestor.com. And especially, I have a podcast. I've interviewed some great people. That's on Facebook, or you can just go out to realestateinvestor.com, Huddle podcast, and got a bunch of stuff on Facebook and Instagram. Gary Boomershine, that's fairly new, but I try to post something meaningful and encouraging every day. I'm starting to add more real estate stuff there. Yeah.
Yeah, so. Awesome. Well, you see, you moved your head, and we can now see realestateinvestor.com.
I know, and Huddle.
And Huddle, there it is. Yeah, I got you. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for tuning into the very first Zoom episode. I hope you are able to come up with some gold nuggets here with our conversation with Gary Boomershine, and raise the bar in your business, whether you're a professional servicing the real estate industry, or an investor who's looking to scale, or you're thinking about getting off the sidelines and jumping in. Make sure to check out the Real Estate Locker Room Show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We just joined Spotify and iHeartRadio. So, let people know about us. If you like what this show is all about, I'd be super grateful if you take an extra moment to rate us. That's really the currency online, everybody. And if we're delivering value, and you give us a review, that helps other people find us when they're searching for content that'll help them be successful. The post-game show notes, reports, links to Gary's various websites will be in our show notes. This is episode 77, so it'll be at johncarneyonline.com, podcast EP 77. While you're there, feel free to drop your name into our subscription newsletter, where we occasionally, and it is very occasionally, we'll send something out that we think will be valuable. We know that everyone's inboxes get jammed up, and we don't want to be that person sending something not useful. Remember to stay focused on your goals, have fun, and stay in the game. I'm your host, John Carney, and until next week, work hard, play hard, and raise the bar.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I appreciate that.
Still recording.
Uh-oh.